His advocates say he's been good for Brevard County, putting the emphasis on restoring the county's infrastructure. His opponents, some within his own Republican Party, have attacked him after a proposed increase to the gas tax and raising ethics questions regarding his income. Perhaps those are among the reasons why he is counting down the days until he is out of office. Welcome to Florida Today's Eye on Brevard. I'm Rob Landers.
And I'm Isadora Rangel. This week I got to talk with Brevard County Commissioner Jim Barfield about all of these topics, his plans for the future, and his hopes for the future of the Space Coast. Commissioner, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Let's start with this year's elections. Why did you decide not to run for re-election?
Well, it came down to too much to do, run a business at the same time and do this. We just won a pretty good sized contract, and there's no way I could really do both. So one had to go, and I want to go back to my business, spend my time with that. It's very important to me.
And you just got inducted into the Space Coast Business Hall of Fame, right?
Yes, yes.
Was that a surprise to you? What was your reaction?
A major surprise, a major surprise. I never expected that, especially some of the people that are already in the Hall of Fame are people I looked up to growing up and in business and everything else. And
who is in the Hall of Fame so far?
Some of them, like Roger Dobson, who actually was a county commissioner too, but a very successful business person, and Hugh Brown, who a few other people like that were really made a difference for me.
So let's move on to a little bit of the latest news involving you. You decided to settle an ethics complaint filed by Republican Matt Nye. You paid over $1,700. The dispute came from an apparent error that you made in your financial disclosure forms. You said the complaint that was filed was politically motivated. Can you explain why you think that, and a little bit of background on how that error came to be?
Well, I don't know if you've seen the financial disclosure forms you have to fill out. They're very detailed, and especially the first year one was tough for me. What I did was I actually, a reason I had to fill them out is because I'm a county commissioner. Well, dumb me, what I did was, I was only a month and a half as a county commissioner in 2014. I forgot to put that salary down there. And then there was some other, didn't give enough detail on some things. But the reason it was politically motivated, because you have to think of it this way. The only way that I would know something that was wrong was either somebody call me and tell me that they saw it and it needed to be corrected, or there's a complaint that's done. In this instance, there was a complaint against me. Now, it has to be politically motivated. Why else would someone go look at the forms and come out and say that, there's errors on it, when they could just call me and tell me? Instead, no, the point was, it was one of these a mode of, look, I got you in this, I caught you. And so now you can spin it, and it looks like an ethics violation.
And I think this falls into this narrative that we've seen in Brevard, sort of the split within the Republican Party. You have, Nye is obviously part of the more right-wing faction of the party. You're considered more of a moderate or more traditional Republican. Do you think that plays into it, of the sort of the more Tea Party, Republican Party trying to kind of overtake the more moderate wing of the party?
I really don't know that much about the politics of that, the political side of it, but I do know this. Every person that appears has their own agenda. And when they have their own agenda when they're running for office, they're going to do what it takes to get in that office and do what they have to do.
Yeah, and just for full disclosure, he is running against State Representative Ted Allman. And let's move on. So then State Representative Randy Fine gets involved in this controversy, and he says that this is an example of an avalanche of corruption in Brevard County and politicians who want to act this way without anyone noticing. What's your response to that? You already talked to us for an article, but give us your brief response.
Well, Representative Fine has his own opinions, and that's what that is. I have not seen the corruption in this county. When I think of corruption, I think of some of the things like the recent mayor in Hallandale, Florida, where, bribery and payoffs. I just don't think we're in that situation. As far as me being part of corruption because I made a mistake on my forms, which I corrected, I think it's the wrong terminology to use. It's just not what we have here.
And what are your thoughts about something? I think in the past, and I've covered politics before, usually your state representatives, state senators don't really get involved or meddle in local county politics. Is this unusual to you to have a state representative getting involved in local matters? And is that a good thing?
No, it's absolutely not a good thing. And it's that, you know, it's kind of, it conflicts with what the Republican Party wants to do. You want to govern at the lowest levels. It takes it away from that. There's a number of bills that they're trying to push through that he especially is that take away the home rule. There's a reason why it's a state legislature, not a local, and that's why we have municipalities and counties. We handle the closest network to the closest position to the citizens.
Yeah, and there have been bills in the past, and there is a proposal for a constitutional amendment. I think it's called Proposition 95, which has sort of failed, but it might still come back, which would curtail local government's abilities to impose regulations on businesses. Do you know why this sort of perceived attack from the legislature on local governments, and how does that make you as a local official feel? I know you have 293 days left on the commission, so I better ask you before you leave us.
Well, for me, you know, they need to, the state legislatures, they need to do their job, and they need to do policy for the state of Florida, and they need to work the budget for the state of Florida. It's our responsibility at the local level to take care of the local environment. And when you try to do a one decision for all, it doesn't work that way. When you talk about businesses, regulating businesses, there's the issue of land use requirements. Each community has its own comprehensive plan for the future. To make those changes, to say that, hey, they're going to control it from Tallahassee makes absolutely no sense.
And let's go back a little bit to the elections in November. This is a very crucial election for the commission. Your seat is up for election. You're not running, obviously. Kurt Smith is running against former Commissioner Trudy Infantini, who is probably way to his right. If this sort of more right-wing version of the Republican Party takes over the commission with 3 votes, which is what could happen here, what are some of the implications of that, and how will that affect policy in the county?
Well, I can only speculate, you know, because I don't know. I know how it is when you once get in office, you see a little bit more and understand a little bit more. But we could see a shift. We could see a major shift where parks, the things that are good for our quality of life, in my opinion, may get defunded or reduced in funding. Like, for instance, as parks, a lot of things that mean a lot, even transportation, some of those type things. I don't know. I don't know what the thinking will be when they get in there.
And economic development, that's something that has been under attack quite a bit, especially from Commissioner John Tabaya. You see that going away and defunding the EDC? It's
very possible. I mean, it's a statewide push to do that, which shows up with Mr. Tabaya and others too, and also community redevelopment agencies, and they have a major role in local redevelopment. But we'll just have to see.
Yeah, and speaking of economic development, the commission recently voted 3-2 to borrow money to pay for an $8 million economic incentive to Blue Origin. You were one of the commissioners who voted for it. I guess a little bit of the issue that some people have had with it is the fact that the county has to borrow the money and also pay interest on top of it. And I guess it leaves a lot of people with a bad taste in their mouth to be giving money to a billionaire such as Jeff Bezos, the founder of Amazon and Blue Origin. Can you explain to taxpayers why is it a good idea to borrow this money for Blue Origin?
First off, it's not final to it's to go out and look to do that. It has to come back to the commission again. And I struggled over that one actually, but to let them go out and come back to the board to make that final decision, I think that's the right thing to do. But I will say this, you know, we have to do economic incentives, as does every other county, every state. Do I like them? Absolutely not. But to stay in the game, you have to do that. It doesn't matter who the company is or whatever. You have to have some sort of economic incentive. Otherwise, we wouldn't have the Blue Origin, we wouldn't have the Northrop Grummans or the Embraers or SpaceX or a lot of these other ones that we do have. Unfortunately, that's just the way the game is. That's just the way it is.
And so when is it worth spending millions of taxpayer dollars to create maybe 200-300 jobs. How do you gauge the cost and benefit?
Well, first off, you look at 300 employees, which will be more than that, but let's say 300 employees, multiply that times 100,000 a year, that's how much money is going into our economy. Those people are spending money buying houses, going to the grocery store, doing all that, which has a trickle-down effect where there's more employees working in all those places. And it continues, there's a tax side of it too, but I'm more concerned about the economy itself, where you have moms and dads working. That's the most important thing I can see. And this is what that does. It stimulates all the local economy, by the way.
So do we need economic incentives to attract more space companies, more technology companies? Some people argue, the Space Coast is a great place to live. You already have NASA and all these other industries which attract new companies to come here. Do you buy those arguments? It seems like you don't, but...
No, because there's Volusia County, there's Brevard County, there's Duval County, there's all these other ones too that have the same thing to offer.
And even with Blue Orange, and I think Brevard was going up against Volusia, right? I believe Volusia came close
at
to...
one time. But they were actually looking at going to Georgia, South Georgia, which is that could be the next competition in the space program. So.
And let's move on to another topic that is very important in Brevard, which is infrastructure and our roads. How often do people complain about the state of our roads here in the county?
Well, in my district, not really that much, because a lot of the roads are state, and the feeder roads are state. But let me just explain why we're even in the situation we are in infrastructure. 15, 20 years ago, decisions were made to defer maintenance, continually to defer, so that maintenance of roads, sewage lines, water lines, all these other things were deferred a lot. Even our own facilities deferred. And so if you continue to defer all that time, you're going to start to pay the price sometime. And we're seeing that now. Fortunately, within the sewage pipes and stuff, those we already have funding for that, but it takes a while to catch up to do that. Roads are in that same situation. And in fact, I was happy to see what President Trump did talk about infrastructure, because it's not just here. We have bridges, we have everything. It's all over the country. The same thing's been happening. And it has to be addressed. So trying to catch up is going to be tough.
Why the decision to defer maintenance?
Money. It's very simple as that. And plus, politically, it's just not you don't want to go and say we want to raise taxes.
Yeah.
I mean, I've done that before, but it's still politically the not correct thing to do. But the fact is, you got to pay. You have to pay for what you get, and you can't be operating at the same price you were 10, 15 years ago when you have costs of asphalt, concrete, and all that going up.
Yeah, so there was a special blue ribbon report that was released in January of 2016 that showed that we have a 283-mile backlog that was just a year ago. And to pay for that backlog, we would need $18 million a year for the next 15 years. Those numbers might have changed in the meantime, and I understand the county is resurfacing more roads in the current budget, right, than before?
Yes, it is. We are holding our own right now. Instead of having the backlog increasing, we now have it now where we can actually do the amount of roads we need to.
Yeah.
But it's, and actually that was 2014, because it was just before I came into office. And we looked at the gas tax. I tried to push that through because we're one of the few counties who doesn't use the full maximum of gas tax. And probably 35 to 40% of the people who buy gas in this county are not from this county. So that was an option, but that did not make it through the county commission. So.
Yeah, you needed a supermajority of the county commission, and you believe you only had 3 at the time. Let's delve into the political ramifications of supporting a new gas tax, especially. This is unique because obviously the commission needs to approve it before it goes to a referendum, correct?
Absolutely. No, we can actually, the county commission, the supermajority can do it, or we can vote to put it to a referendum.
And how hard is it politically? And you're leaving office, so it must be very freeing to be saying all these things, because you're not running for re-election, but a commissioner who is running for re-election. I mean, how hard is it to go back to constituents and say, I supported a new tax, even if it's for a good cause? I think most people will argue.
Well, I as a commissioner, I was kind of different. I didn't really get too concerned about what I wanted to do, what I could see as the right thing and bring up. And that's why I brought it up, because it depends on what your future is. I don't have a political career. That's not my career, and I don't know how people can do that. But it's, you know, you got to do what's right. And gas tax, it's a pay-as-you-go. When you drive, you pay the gas tax, and it helps you. It takes care of the roads.
And it's people from outside the county.
Yes.
Also paying. There are some people who believe we have existing money in the budget, and all we have to do is cut luxuries. Do you see a lot of luxuries in the budget, and where could we cut more to free up money for roads?
There's all through the budget. There's no line item that says luxuries or fluff or any of that stuff. You know. So what it really is once you start, and this is something that most of us don't understand, and it's $1 billion a year budget. Well, there's only $222 million of that, which is general fund, which can be used basically for operate the county. You take out the sheriff's department, the jail, and everything else, it comes down to $85 million. Mm-hmm. We have $85 million to take care of a 72-mile-long county. That's not much money, and so it is tough to pull things out. If you take some out, you're gonna impact the quality of services or the quality of life.
And so there is a bill filed by Representative Randy Fine, which would use the money that currently the county gets from the tourism development tax and expand how you can use that money to include sewer and road infrastructure, as well as lagoon restoration. What are your thoughts about that bill? Would it help the county to come up with money for sewer?
It's not very much money. You know, it's a very small amount. I think percentage, you're looking at maybe $1 million to $2 million a year, and that's not much for that when we have the lagoon money we're using that works. But it's a bigger picture than that. For me, if the voters, the citizens have specific use for a specific fund, and that's tourist development tax was put in for that. Where does it stop? Are you going to go use other tax for referendum money that was for Parks and Rec, or are you going to go use that on roads? Or are you going to, if it sets a precedent that's not a very good precedent to set. The reason you have a specific tax for a certain function is for that function. It's just, that's not right to be switching it around.
Sure, and what inspired the bill was the fact that the county dumped just over 20 million gallons of sewage into the lagoon after Hurricane Irma. What is the county doing now to remediate or to fix our sewage system?
Well, that was not a failure. That was not actually caused by a failure of the sewage treatment plants.
It was just so much water. It was backing into
flooding.
people's homes.
It was the flooding. And that's something that's being, that we're talking about. From all we had is the flooding issues, and that's what I've been focusing on in our area, because the flooding causes all that. We already have the funding because we raised the utility rates back in 2014 and did a bonding plan, and they're replacing all these pipes. It just takes time now. You have to go through design, you have to locate what's there to make sure you know where it is, and it takes a lot of time.
And let's move on to nonprofits.
Okay.
The county made a decision to phase out funding for nonprofits, and the system in place, basically you have an advisory board which says these are the nonprofits that rank the highest according to our criteria. First, I want to ask, is it a good thing to phase out funding for nonprofits? Is the current system that we have in place good enough to allocate those dollars? And we had the latest issue with Meals on Wheels, which didn't make the list, but then eventually the county decided to fund it.
In fact, I saw the article, I don't know if I saw it online, that John Byron wrote. And it's actually, what he's saying is exactly what we should do. We should look at what the services is that we need, and what is the return on investment. What are we getting for it? And just like we have EDC, we have other contracts for specific services. They're a corporation, they're just a nonprofit corporation. So with Meals on Wheels, that needs to be a line item in the budget, because they take $60,000 and convert it to $1.2 million. They can do that, and that money feeds 1,500 people a week. So the same thing, that's the way we need to do it. It needs to be brought forward like a proposal, and where do you get the return on? That's the way I believe it should be.
Yeah, and John Byer, one of our community columnists, wrote that instead of having a lump sum for the grants, you have it in a line item in a budget like you would have for any other project in the county.
It's a contract. It should just be a contract.
As a contract. So it seems like there is room for nonprofit funding, not just in the way that we have been doing so far.
Correct.
The county also recently approved money for arts and cultural organizations. I believe Commissioner John Tabaya was the only vote against it. What is the value, in your view, in funding these cultural organizations?
Well, when you start looking at the educational side of the importance of cultural arts, every society, we look to that, and it's a. I believe that with the money spent, you're bringing, a lot of it's coming from the tourist development side too, and I believe that's important both for our own community and for other people visiting. I really do.
So people argue that citizens should fund it through charitable contributions or by joining these organizations, and that government should stay out of it. It seems like you disagree. I mean, should government really be in the business of helping these organizations, or just leave it up to us residents?
Well, I don't think it hurts for as a government to put money towards some of these, especially some of the things that it comes back to the education and to the culture of our community.
So another decision of the commission, maybe a couple of months ago, was to appeal a decision by a federal judge who said that the commission's prayer system was unconstitutional and violated. It was basically discriminating against groups that are not religious, such as agnostic groups and atheist groups, who actually try to partake in that section of each commission meeting. Why the decision to appeal the decision by the judge, and why not just allow groups that are non-religious to take part in this section of the meeting?
Well, I really can't say much because we are still in a legal side of this. I'll just say this, though, that there is a movement. It's not about what you really believe. It's more about those out there that are trying to make a name and to make a lawsuit. And that's all I can really say about it.
Yeah, it's just as a newspaper, we gave the commission a thumbs down for appealing the decision. And obviously, we're all about the First Amendment and the rights to free speech. Do you see, perhaps it is just people just looking for a lawsuit, but do you think they have a case to be made in a country where, free speech is free speech, and we can go as far as allowing hate speech in some
you have complete free speech at a commission meeting. You have a comment section, public comments. You can get up and speak. We have people speak from anything you can think of. It may not have anything to do with the county, but they have an opportunity to do that. And so it's an open meeting. You can do that. So it really doesn't impact any of that.
And let's move on. You're going to be leaving us.
Wait, I'm not dying.
In 293 days, but when you leave the commission, what is your vision for the county? Things that you feel that you didn't have time to do, or that the commission didn't have time to do, that you wish, that you hope will get done in the next few years?
I'm still going to be in the community. I grew up here. I'll still be here, and I'm working, and I'll still be engaged in different opportunities, that whatever I'm needed to do. I think what we really need to do is we need to focus on what the meat of the county is. Our infrastructure. The infrastructure and economic development, those type things really come together. And infrastructure, something's going to have to give because we have so deferred for so long. And I don't have an answer, but somewhere along the line, we're going to have to come up with some more money at some point. You can look at our facilities; they're still 1980s, and roads, and we're probably at $300 million in our own facilities that need to be redone, not to mention all the roads. So it's a backlog that just continues to grow and grow and grow.
Yeah, and despite of that, the county has grown a lot, especially with the end of the SHOTO program. Some people just thought that was it for Brevard. I mean, what have you seen in the last 7 years? I mean, we've seen a lot of growth here, and what do you think has spurred that?
Well, I tell you, the skill level of the people around here has added a lot to that growth. When we have a space center and we have Harris and we have all these other high-tech organizations around here, when companies come in, they look to see what is the base of people there, and that helps a lot. The other thing is our cost of living here is very good. And of course, the climate's good, and we don't have income tax. But there's a lot of things that really sell us. And we were in bad shape after the shuttle program and the recession and all that. We were in bad shape. But everybody pulled together to go out and look for other companies and get them in here once it matched. And I think that's what's making a major difference.
So a personal question here, at least for me, what's going on with Trader Joe's on Merritt Island? We talked a couple months ago.
You really put me on the spot here, really are. All I can say is this. When Trader Joe's talks about coming into an area, they eventually get there. And that's all I really know. But I really believe they'll be here. I do.
And are you excited about the new Chick-fil-A?
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah.
Does that signal some sort of growth in the county, or are we just exaggerating what these new businesses actually mean?
Merritt Island's growing substantially. A number of new homes, large homes, nice communities going in. And so that whole corridor down 520, Merritt Island is being redeveloped. There's a car dealership that's going to be leaving. That's going to be redeveloped. The mall is trying to rework itself with different parcels, and that's where Chick-fil-A is. I think we're going to see a lot of growth along there, but good growth, not strip malls. Good growth, and everything is fine.
Commissioner, thank you so much.
All right, thank you.
That's it for this week. If you have questions about today's interview, contact me at irangel@floridatoday.com.
Our thanks to Commissioner Barfield for coming into the studio to talk to Isadora. Be sure to join us again next week and look for information coming soon about the Eye on Brevard podcast so you can listen on the go.